And we're live. It's finally arrived. I feel like Sean and Ryan and I have been talking about The Wire just passively on Instagram for at least like a year.
At least. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
And now we are finally able to talk to all of you in the chat about it and start what will hopefully be the first of many fun kind of breakdowns of this show. So I thank you all for coming by. If you're watching this live or you're watching this on the rewind, we are here not to do a season by season breakdown. I think a lot of shows you could do that. And we thought about it and we debated it. And both of these guys were spot on by saying this is not going to work that way. And they totally convinced me because at first I was like, no, it's easier season by season. They're all themes. And they really convinced me this is a show that is outside the box, outside the norm, doesn't do things the normal way. So a breakdown show can't do it the same way. A breakdown show can't do it the same way as you would. So we've decided to break down this show over at least 4 episodes, live streams, talking about various themes from this amazing television series, The Wire. But let's say hello to these guys here joining me. This is Sean from Stay Puft 1983.
What's up, everybody?
Look at that sweet California blend art, man. I always dig that behind you there.
Yep,
If you guys don't know California Blend and you haven't seen her stuff, you should check her out on Instagram. But obviously, Sean is highlighting several awesome pieces by her there, and she turns out amazing pieces so quickly and so many of them in our community.
Yeah, she'll be on the show tomorrow, so I know you can't wait.
So you can catch her live. I put the link to Sean's channel down in the description below, so you can sub him up, and you can find her as California Blend on Instagram. I'm thinking of getting a couple of pieces for the girls' bedrooms. I got to just pick who they're going to get. It's a challenge. If you're a Comic Time 101 fan, you probably know this guy, Fire Guy Ryan. How you doing, man?
What's happening?
And also frequent sort of guest on my channel for things.
Lately, it has been more on your channel than on Comic Tom, but I'm getting back in the swing over there.
Yeah, this all started kind of as a, hey, let's do a top 5 episodes of The Wire. And then all of us kind of felt like there's just no way.
I felt like we done went back and forth on how we going to do this for so long that, it's like we got to do something because we really wanted to talk. I really wanted to just get together and talk about it. I really didn't care what type of format it would be. I just want to start the show and say, let's talk about Snot Boogie.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that opening moment, I mean, it's a great first episode, and we could get into that, but that opening moment you're talking about, yeah, who shot Snot? It's America, man. That whole sequence, and then to end that episode with another body and another moment where you get to see it from the crowd perspective, looking at somebody who's dead and how that's going to impact the future of the show with D'Angelo and everything. So good. Such a good hour. I'm going to shout out the chat real quickly, say hello to those of you that came by, those of you hardcore Wire fans or curious to try out the Wire fans. Maybe you'll learn some things about the show. I promise you, we're going to get so deep on this that if you've never watched The Wire, you're really just going to understand it in an abstract kind of sense, but it might motivate you to check it out and really give it a go because it is absolutely worth your time. We got Rob Boswell first in the chat. What is up, man? And TK, hello to you. Unruly Simeon, he's been saying how pumped he is that we're talking about The Wire, and he's been looking forward to this for a while. And my guy Sam I Am is the same way. My name is my name. Let's get this Wire discussion going. Hello to Tess Taylor. John's graded books. Oh, sorry. I will say 2 of the 3 are gifts. So, this is a Steve Whiting right here. You can't give me credit for Steve Whiting's goodness. So, and this is Comics for Blame. And then that I bought the Secret Wars. That's mine. And then there's Stay Puft. He's there in the chat. Mm-hmm. My man Tacoma, another great teacher in this community. Hello to you. And let's see. John, wait. What? What am I waiting for?
His next comment.
I'm not even Greek. There you go. Good. See, he knows his Wire quotes. I made a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios. Oh, Honey Nut Cheerios. You got the Honey Nut? You got the Honey Nut?
Yep.
Ka-chung. You can see the people who love this show. They're already quoting it in this chat. I love it.
Apparently he hasn't seen The Wire.
There you go. Kachuk says, I haven't seen The Wire, but Peter Griffin has been raving about it. There you go. You should definitely check it out. We're going to try to convince you tonight. So in short, I'll give you the synopsis for The Wire as best I can. And it's so complicated that to sum it up is not easy.
Please do.
This is a television series about the city of Baltimore and all the different sort of systems within that city that make it work, whether they are legal or illegal or somewhere in the middle. So the first season covers police officers and the criminals running the drug organizations in West Baltimore. Second season throws in the dockside workers who are helping to smuggle things into the city. The third season gets into some of the politics. You get to meet some of the politicians and some of the upper level police chiefs. Then the fourth season brings in the school districts, and you get to see how the schools are failing some of these kids and why they're ending up in the situations we've seen them in previously. And then the final season brings us into the world of journalism, and we can see why the journalists are having a hard time affecting any realistic change or shining a light in an effective sort of way. So the series covers all of that with a slew of characters, but really at its core, it's about some of these struggling to be good people stuck in situations that are invariably corrupt. And that is kind of our topic for tonight, is corruption and how it kind of runs rampant on the show and highlights certain qualities within all the systems. The Wire and The Shield are dopeness. I agree, Just Rican, and thank you for coming by.
I would like to say that the biggest character in this show is the city itself.
Absolutely.
Baltimore is the character. It's what drives this show. That's why this show focuses on so many different facets. Right. From the police to the drugs to the docks and stuff. It's all about the failings of this city. And that's what makes The Wire so unique as opposed to just being a normal cop show. It's more than just a cop show.
Yeah, I definitely would not have been into it at all if it was just a normal cop show. I'll mess with that stuff.
Well, after I watched the first time I watched all 5 seasons, and I bought them in a box. I watched season 1 and it was so good. I found a box set and I just bought the whole thing. And then I watched all of it, and it ruined me for cop shows. I stopped being able to enjoy Law and Order. I stopped being able to enjoy CSI. All that other crap. Just I can't watch that stuff anymore. It ruined that stuff for me because anytime I see some cop in New York on Law and Order pull out some digital tool and map the city and show you where the killer's striking, I'm like, there's no way they got that technology. There's no way they have the money for this stuff. They're still using typewriters on The Wire. They're using typewriters.
Yeah, I was like that. I'm like, they still use typewriters?
So it's so good and so accurate. It does ruin other shows in some ways. And I will say the part of the reason why it's so good at capturing Baltimore, like Sean is saying, is because of the 2 gentlemen that are kind of running this for the most part, all the way through at least the first 4 seasons. One being a former journalist covering the city of Baltimore, and the other being a former police officer turned teacher in the city of Baltimore. And these 2 gentlemen have a clear connection with the city, a clear knowledge of how it works, how it speaks and sounds and feels. And they're able to basically inject that into every single moment, which makes it incredibly authentic.
And the thing about it is, if you watch Homicide, the TV series from the 90s, there's elements in it. It's almost like prelude to The Wire. Because that focus more on the police and stuff like that. But you get to see the inner dealings of, the whole politics and police and stuff. And then before The Wire, there was The Corner, which focused on the streets and the drug game, and the addicts, So all this led up perfectly to The Wire. It's like Homicide and The Corner were preludes to watching The Wire. And The Wire was just the opus magnus of the whole thing,
It was like those were your appetizers, and then you got your main course, right?
Yeah.
And it was funny because I mentioned to Sean that I had read the book Homicide: A Year in the Killing Streets, which was Simon's book that he wrote before he had the TV series Homicide and before he had The Corner. And he was like, see, that's the kind of stuff I want to get into on this. Like, there's so many other layers beyond these 5 seasons of like 10 episodes or 13 episodes each.
Yep.
All right.
I think something you gotta think about too is people consider. I've heard many people and lists that put The Wire as the best television show of all time, and I think when you hear a phrase like that, it makes you kind of just go, "Yeah, right." Like bullshit. That can't be true. But if you have not seen this show and you don't know anything about it, I think that you really do need to consider that it is true. That praise is all accurate and justified and warranted, and you really need to watch this show. Try it out. That's all I got.
Out of curiosity, before we get into the corruption idea here, how many times, Sean, have you watched the entire show?
You know, if I start with season 1, I'm watching the whole damn thing. Like every time I start watching The Wire, I'm gonna watch the whole thing, right? because it hooks you. It really does hook you. I remember when I didn't watch The Wire when it first came out. Right, it wasn't until like around season 3 when a guy at my job had recommended, "Hey, you should watch The Wire." So I was like, I'll go check it out. I went to Best Buy. I bought the first season. I'll never forget because I worked that night and I was off this night. I got up. I started watching it at 6 p.m. I didn't finish until 6 a.m. I watched the whole season in one sitting. Sleep was killing me, and that's the last episode. But I was like, I'm gonna watch it because I done made it this far, and it was just so good that I went to Best Buy and bought up the next couple seasons.
Hell yeah!
Thank you, Comic Head, for coming by. Yeah, I mean, it is truly addictive. I mean, when I watched the first season, I was in the middle of doing like teaching credential work where I was stuck sitting at a computer for hours, and I was like, I need something to watch, and I hear this is amazing, so I started watching season 1, and it was so good that I was like, by the time I finished season 1, I was like on Amazon, just buy the whole show, just buy it, just own it, and then I started throwing in the discs, and I powered through the whole thing so quickly, and then I watched it twice that year. So for me, this is the 4th full watch, although there have been times when I've gone in and rewatched certain episodes because there's just some hours that are particularly poignant or certain seasons. So I've jumped in and rewatched certain bits, but it's only been 4 like full watches.
Yeah, I'm at 4 too.
About 5.
5. Ryan, how many for you? 4 as well. Look at us. Wow.
4 times in 5 years. I'm a relatively late comer to The Wire, but it's so good.
And Jason Walker says he made it, Ryan.
Hey. Jason.
All right, so I'm gonna get us started here. We are talking about corruption tonight, specifically the theme of corruption on the show, how it works, and why it's so important. So I made a little slideshow here. Let me present that. Really, just to give you an idea of characters that are important, and I'm going to start us off with the lawyer. Maurice Levy. And I picked this character because he is, I think, as slimy as many characters are on this show, for me, he is like the slimiest of characters. Like every time he comes on screen, he almost like oozes for me. So Maury is the lawyer for several criminal organizations through the course of the show. Specifically at the very beginning, he is connected to the Barksdale crew. Avon is the head of that group, and Stringer Bell is his right-hand man. And he is funneling their money, getting them in and out of jail, helping them with this or that. But over the course of the 5 seasons, Levy is slowly, you see how he's actually connected to many characters beyond that Barksdale crew. Whether it's Prop Joe and some of his people, or whether it becomes Marlo Stanfield and some of his people a little later on, or whether it's people at the courthouse where they really get him in season 5. Levy has this, he's like a leech quality for me, where he's just like sucking the lifeblood out of several characters. I pulled a little GIF for you to enjoy here, where he's saying, you wanted to be in the game, right? Now you're in the game. And this is when he's busting the owner of the strip club, Barksdale's guy. What's his Orlando, right?
Yeah. Ask Orlando.
So that, a guy who had a sweet gig and blew it by doing something illegal. Right?
He was just a front. All you gotta do is front the business, and he wanted to get in the game, and now you're in the game.
So for me, when it came to the idea of corruption, these guys had some great picks, but I was kind of stuck trying to think of who I wanted to cover. And I threw out some pretty mediocre ideas. And then it hit me like, this guy is the most corrupt character of the like second tier behind these two guys' picks. He is completely unscrupulous, right? He'll take money from anybody and just do whatever he wants. He's happy to steal your money. And for me, the clincher was somewhere in season 5. I was talking to Sean before we went live. He says something. Marlowe's in his office, and Marlowe is a criminal who gives the lawyer a cell phone number. And he's like, if you need me, you can get a hold of me on this cell phone number. And he takes it and he writes it down. And then Marlowe leaves. And then the lawyer turns to his business partner or a private investigator and says, that guy's going to mean a lot of money for me. That guy's now just giving us his cell phone. That guy's going to now mean a lot of bail. They're going to get wiretaps on this guy, and it's going to mean more money for me. And in that moment, I realized he's not really on the criminal's side. No. He is really on his own side. And he could have easily just said, hey, Marlowe, cell phones, bad idea. You're going to get caught. Instead, his attitude is, yeah, you go for it, buddy. I'm going to get all your punks out of jail later when you get arrested, and I'm going to make more money. He just is such a greaseball. What do you guys want to? Any thoughts on lawyer Levy?
Well, for him, it's all about the money. I mean, that's pretty much all he cares about, because he knows that these guys is going to bring him business, and he knows that if he keeps getting them out, clearing their cases, that's more money. You know, that's why he deals with Barksdale. That's why he deals with Prop Joe, and why he deals with Marlowe. Matter of fact, it was Prop Joe that introduced Marlowe to Levy. You know, so that was like another pitfall for Prop Joe. You know, he pretty much set himself up for failure as soon as he hooked up with Marlowe. And all he had to do was get Marlowe the lawyer, and Marlowe like, all right, I'm good. I don't need you no more. So
and Levy doesn't care. Levy's like, I'll take his money. I'll take the next guy's money. I'll get the next guy after that. He's the cockroach that doesn't get killed by the nuclear bomb.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of cockroaches like Creepshow.
If Ryan, Tessa thinks your cat deserves a shout out on this show.
She definitely does.
Let's see. Sorry. And Gore Vidal says, I agree with Stay Puft regarding Homicide. When I saw The Wire, I thought about Homicide, Hill Street Blues, NYPD Blue. It's interesting how Simon built on those shows. Good call, as always. So dirty, slime, oozing slime out of his pores. When Omar calls Maury, and so that was something Sean mentioned before we went live as well. When calls him out on his BS, right? Omar.
You got the
Omar
briefcase.
calls everybody out.
I got the shotgun.
Yeah, right. So that's sorry. You can go ahead. You were saying in the courtroom, right?
Yeah, that courtroom scene is just classic. You know, Levy thinking, oh, this guy's a criminal. He sticks up drug dealers and stuff. Like, well, you're no different than me. You do it with your briefcase. You do it the legal way. I do it the illegal way. But at the same time, we stealing from others.
Both of them are kind of just like swimming in the wake of these criminals and kind of nibbling all their cash and chasing their tails, I guess, so to speak. It's an interesting look at the different layers of criminality, and somebody like Levy is a good example, I guess, of just the reason things never really seem to work out or get better in this show is because you have scumballs like Levy just looking out for themselves instead of doing what they could to kind of make things better.
And you know what made me realize how much Levy didn't care? Because Stringer Bell was trying to get this whole thing with Clay Davis. We're going to talk about Clay Davis later. And I remember at the party scene when Avon was sitting there with Clay Davis, Levy, and the developer, Avon wasn't interested in hearing that. But seeing Levy and Clay Davis together, you would think that Levy will hit Stringer Bell up on Clay Davis and what he does, And when he finds out, Stringer finds out from Levy later that you've been rain-made, I'm like, well, shit, you should have told me that before. Like, this guy could be like that. So why are you going to wait until after I don't get screwed over to tell me that, yeah, he's a rainmaker. He screws people over and take money.
He doesn't care, right?
He doesn't care.
No. I totally agree. And there's this quality to Levy where he almost relishes in the fact that he's corrupt. Like, he's doing he's a lawyer and he's breaking the law like constantly. he is fully aware of what Avon is doing. He's fully aware of what Marlo and Prop Joe are doing, and he doesn't care, right? He's fine with it. And then he, in turn, later on, we learn, is breaking the law himself with his spies in the courthouse that are feeding him documents and things.
Yep.
He is clearly fine breaking the law and being aware of other people breaking the law, and it doesn't matter to him. His scruples are none as long as he's getting paid. North says the lawyer reminds me of a criminal defense attorney in Law and Order episode from '95. Digging deep. DA Jack McCoy must take on a former law school classmate, now corrupt mob lawyer, exploiting the system. Okay. House Counsel is the name of that episode. Nice. Thank you, brother. Sam I Am says, when you come at the king, you best not miss.
One of my favorite quotes.
This show is eminently quotable.
Yeah. Remember when I posted that video with all the Wire quotes?
Now, if you guys don't follow Sean on Instagram, you're missing out because he posts a ton of Wire stuff. It's how we first kind of all got started talking on some of these things. Mm-hmm. One of my favorites that you posted that I had totally forgotten about was the journey of the ring from season 4, and how it ends up in all these different people's hands. And I watched that well before I watched the newest run of the season. And it was a wonderful way to, like, I know it's coming. So every time the ring popped up, I was like, oh yeah, okay, here we go. But the insight this guy's got, it's amazing.
Yeah, this show is just so layered. You know, there's so many layers to this show. And it's like I find out new things whenever I go look up a YouTube video and I read the comments, because I know people in the comments is going to detail things. You get these little details that actually mean something in the long run. Like at that time, I didn't know that Kennard was there during the shooting in season 3.
Yeah, I want to be Omar.
Yeah, that was Kennard. Yeah, I had to look real closely, and then it makes perfect sense on what happens towards in season 5. Now, when you add it together, because you're like, it felt random what happened in season 5.
And if you look at the 2 pieces of bread that you're talking about, the moment when the little kids are emulating Omar on the street, and the moment when Omar is having to face one of those kids in the second to last episode, the meat in that sandwich is the moment Bunk and Omar have a conversation at the train station, right?
Yep.
When Bunk has to say, I seen these kids who are pretending to be you in the street, and what are you doing to make this world better? What are you doing but just like living like a parasite off of this, right? Yep. Bunk calls him out on all of his stuff. And Omar's not having it, of course. Omar's not having any of it.
Yeah, no, that's like a different topic. You know, we went from Levy to that. I think that's one of the things that's going to be interesting about this show is how we veer a little bit off topic to touch on something else. But you know, it's all in the game. It's all in the game.
A fuzzy Dunlop informant.
Oh man!
All right, so let's Ryan. We're going to jump to your character here. Let me add this back to the stream. We're going to move on from the lawyer Levy to Frank Sobotka. What do you got to say about Frankie?
The second season of this show is kind of where a lot of people, it's jarring because you spend the whole first season of this show getting used to this group of drug dealers, criminals, and then this group of cops who are hunting them down. And the whole first season is kind of basically like a cat and mouse kind of cops versus criminals, relatively standard, drug dealing kind of story. And then when the second season comes around and you kind of check back in with these characters, suddenly there's this whole other group of union like dock workers thrown in the mix that you've never seen before, and you're just like, what are these guys doing? Like, okay, so you get the sense that this show is now kind of zooming out and peeling layers back and examining the city as a whole. Like Sean was saying before, it's not just a story about these specific cops and criminals. It's really showing you how a city kind of falls apart. And in order to do that, you have to look at this group of people working the docks and the stevedores union, which I didn't know what the hell a stevedore was when I started this show, but now I do. They're the guys who unload crates and cargo off of various ships that come in at the port. And Frank Sobotka is this guy who is the treasurer of their union. And their union's kind of shit. It's kind of falling apart because there's not a lot of ships coming in. There's not a lot of things for them to do, not a lot of boxes for them to offload. So everyone's kind of just floundering and trying to scrape by off of, working like one day every 2 weeks or something like that, which is clearly not enough. So Frank is stressing out, and he's worried about going to visit politicians to kind of lobby for them to reopen various parts of the port and allow for more ships to come in and for his guys to get more work done. So in order to see these politicians, he has to like get money somehow to kind of grease the wheels, because everything takes money. So to do that, he starts working with this guy, the Greek, and smuggling, I guess, is the best word for it. The Greek pays Frank Sobotka, and he looks the other way for things to kind of fall off the back of the ship, so to speak, and he uses his illegal profits from that to kind of try and get his goals accomplished when it comes to revitalizing the port and getting his union back up to its glory days, which is the ultimate kind of form of corruption that he's doing here. It's like political / union / drug dealing corruption, and it also gives you the benefit of seeing how the drugs get into the city altogether, which is kind of what the previous season was about, and
or even why somebody would be willing to do that.
Yeah,
because he's possibly the most altruistic of our 3 corruption candidates here.
The funny thing about season 2, when I first watched season 2, I was with the people and like, man, what the hell? They put more white people in there, man. We losing our show. I was like, no wonder people don't like this season. But the more I look at it, it's an underrated season, and it's an important season. Just like Ryan mentioned, you get to see how the drugs come in. It's more than just the prostitutes. That's how the drugs come in, and that's how Prop Joe makes his money. That good raw shit, And
exactly.
And then you look at the whole thing. It also focuses on the failings of the union and how this country has went away from being unionized. We've seen over the years that no company wants unions, and nobody wants to deal with unions. So we've seen more and more non-union work, and there's a very small, limited amount of union that has companies. The post office has a union, probably the buses and stuff, they have unions, but police officers have a union. But overall, it just shows you the decline in the union and how work has declined so badly that they have to resort to any means necessary to try and make money, to try and save what's left of the union and what's left of the job. Because like Ryan's saying, they're struggling to make ends meet. They're working like maybe 3 days out of a week. You can't survive off that. And then with the changes they wanted to make to the ports, it really made it hard for Frank to try and maintain this environment that he's trying to build when they're not getting work. You got disgruntled workers. You had that gruesome injury that happened to the guy with the leg. That was horrible, man. And, it just made that season feel a lot more important than I initially thought when I first watched it, because it really shows how the city is really failing multiple areas, not just the police. It's failing multiple areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as I dislike season 2, and we've had a lot of chats in our group about seasons that we like or dislike, and for me, 2 is not as bad as 5 for me.
No,
but I don't care for the fact that the stories in season 2 with the Sobotkas and the union are so obvious, and exactly where they're going to end up. I mean, I almost feel like I could watch episode 1 and tell you, I know how Ziggy's going to end up. I know how Nick's going to end up. I know how Frank's going to end up. Like, there's no surprise left in it for me. Versus season 3, the crap that goes down in season 3, nobody can predict what's going to happen in season 3. That everything comes out of left field in that season for me. It's a punch.
I will say that episode in season 2 where Frank was walking towards the Greeks and they found out from their informant in the FBI, that was like one of the hardest watches, because like he's just literally walking to his doom. And the way they framed that, the way they set that up, it almost felt like, damn, that was dirty, man. That was dirty.
Oh yeah. But again, I feel like it was going to happen at some point.
But I agree with Sam I Am in the chat. Ziggy is the worst.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The worst. The moment you first see him and he does his shit, I'm like, all right, this guy automatically the worst character in the series.
There it is. The poor duck. Stupid Ziggy.
Oh man, what he did to that duck was horrible, man. And you know me, I'm a bird lover. I got like 9 parakeets, you know, so any bird related thing I like. And just seeing that duck get drunk was like, no.
But on the other side, what I do like about the season and what I do like about him as a choice for corruption is what he's doing for corruption. He's doing for a good reason, right? He is not lining his own pockets. He's not enriching himself. No. He's taking that money, and you watch when somebody wants to quit, he says, hey, go have a shot for me at the bar. And there's somebody at the bar going to help that stevedore pay his whatever for that week. Right?
Yeah.
He's using that money to lobby because he is literally the only person trying to save the union. They're trying to save the docks, trying to save the whole thing. So he is, of our 3 characters, he's the one who's not lining his own pockets with this money. And so in that way, you appreciate Frank, and I like him the most of the whole season 2 new characters, but he is so naive. He is so naive. It's almost painful the way he's like, oh yeah, they're paying you to smuggle things in. You don't think a container is going to have drugs or a bunch of prostitutes from Ukraine? Like, of course it's going to have that crap in it. How naive you got to be? They're not going to pay you all that money for some, stereos.
The Greeks did do him dirty by leaving that container on the field.
Right.
He like soon as the what's his name? Boris. I call him Boris. As soon as he drove off and left that, yeah, Sergey, but I call him Boris because he looks like a Boris. As soon as he drove off and left that container, they were all in hot water, and that's the type of pressure you just don't want to be in. Like,
right?
Yo, he's leaving this hot container there.
But Frank is so surprised when it's like, hey, that had prostitutes in it. I'm like, I just want to like smack him and be like, come on, what do you think they're going to be bringing in this country, man? Of course it's going to be. Tacoma says, and think of the bigger picture. To sway politicians, you have to have the money and you need to pay a lobbyist. And that's the legit part of what he's doing.
He spoke to this guy right here in season 2.
And that's the funny thing too, is I think a lot, in season 1, you see a little bit of what Levy's doing with his money, and you see a little bit of the city developers. Season 2, you get another side of that developer, like who's going to get this land near the docks? Who's going to revitalize the city? Who wants to put the money in whose hand doing what? And then it feeds into the politician side, which we're going to get to in a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I love how there's that shot in the last season too of the mayor and them breaking ground on they figure out what they're going to do with this land, and it's build condos, which is what they were worried about the whole time. They don't get the green pier figured out. They don't dredge the canal or do all that stuff that Frank was trying to get done. They just end up building condos on there, and Frank's his nephew Nick is still there. Yeah, and you see a character from season 2 that you haven't seen in 3 years, just kind of there in the background 3 years later, and he's just, he yells and makes a scene, and it's a really cool way to tie it all together through some like now minor characters. And it's one of my favorite scenes in the whole show, actually, because
did you notice one of the stevedores is among the homeless that when they're walking through the homeless section in season 5, 3 seasons after we've met all these stevedores who are trying to keep going, we're interviewing the homeless, and among them is a character that we would recognize as being a union member who was maybe on harder times in that, but now has clearly gotten worse, right?
I love this show.
It's funny. It's funny when, you see a guy as part of the union and has a job, and then 3 years later he's out of a job and on the streets. That shows you the cruelty of what this city can do to you. What the system does to people, and that's the whole point of The Wire. It's systematic. It's a systematic breakdown of why this city is just falling apart from season to season.
And corruption, I think, is the crack that like everything seeps into for this, right? Like if the wrong people are happy just making money, nothing's going to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what seems to be a lot of all of this corruption theme on The Wire is the lawyers lining their pockets, the lobbyists lining their pockets, the politicians and some of the union workers lining their pockets, and the people who want some change getting sort of pushed off to the side.
And nobody lines their pockets more than this guy.
Right? Let's move on past fucking the wall with Sobotka here and get into Senator Clay Davis, the man who says she. All right.
The ultimate. All three of these guys we covered, the most charismatic, the slickest talking bastard out there. This man, like I told John backstage that I saw a comment on YouTube, this man could slick talk a Muslim into eating pork. That's how much he can get away with shit. Because he uses his tongue to get out of situations and knows how to sway people into making decisions.
Right.
What makes Clay Davis so unique is that, yeah, he's a con artist. He takes money, he takes bribes, money laundering, does all this corrupt stuff. But at the same time, he knows how to keep it on the low. He knows that outside of what the police know, when they busted his bag, man, coming out the high rises with $25,000 in money
in season 1, right?
Yeah, that was the first instant that you see that this politician is not what he seems. And when you see that, and when they all come at Clay Davis, and he has that meeting with Daniels, at first he's talking all nice, and saying that money is nothing, it's like some chump change. But then when Daniels kept pressing the issue, then he went and ghetto on his ass and just start talking shit. And that's where you see how these senators and these politicians can be. They can be as conniving, they can be as devious, and they can be as downright, how would the word be? And Tacoma saying he talks his way out of situations, but he knows how to just get his way. And when he don't get his way, he goes ranting at Burrell, he goes ranting at Royce, and then next thing you know, he got to do things for himself. To try and all right, they not gonna get me. The Baltimore police, really? That whole sequence was crazy.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. City police. Yeah.
And then when he said Burrell about Daniels, I hope you put him on the footpole so long and hard that he'll be able to see the Philadelphia cops walking towards him, man. I mean, this man right here. This man right here, Clay Davis, he was corrupt to everybody. Not only the politicians, not only to the police, but to drug dealers themselves. With Stringer Bell's trying to legitimize his business, he has to go through Clay Davis. And Clay Davis knew, I could play this guy like what is it, the string. He's on the string. He got Stringer Bell on the string.
Yeah.
And he's just playing him along, getting all the money he can get. And then when he's done with him, he's done. That whole what is it? The faucet. the guy right with the golden goose that laid them golden eggs.
Yep.
That was all just a ruse, just to get more money out of Stringer. Anything he does to put more money in his pockets, he's down with it. He did it with both mayors. He went to Carcetti and said, "Hey, you give me $30,000, I'll help promote your campaign." Then he go to Royce and get $35,000. So it's anything that he does, he wants to make money off of. And that's the whole point of Clay Davis. Laundering, bribes, and more money. This guy gets away with it.
Money in politics is obviously so interconnected in our country and probably elsewhere around the world. But I think Clay Davis clearly epitomizes that sort of a relationship between citizens and their representatives, and how money greases everything, right? He even says at one point, he says something like, he's like, I ain't doing this for me. I'm doing this for the party. I'm out there beating the streets. I'm out there getting the money for you, for your reelection campaign. He tries to be so of the people and of the party, like he's helping the Democratic Party win, even though everybody acknowledges that the Democrats are going to win everything every time anyways. Like, why do we need to fundraise like this? Because the Republicans don't stand a chance anywhere. They even joke that the person wins, whoever wins the Democratic primary basically already has the office. They just accept it as a fact.
Hey, you see the screen share I got up,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Let me bring it up. Boom.
This is who Clay Davis is based off of. And this is the guy that was interviewing Clay in season 5 in the radio station. Larry Young was a senator that he was exposed from the Maryland state legislature and eventually acquitted. And now he's a radio host who interviewed the man who was inspiration of him. So that's the funny thing about The Wire, is that it takes these real politicians or ex-politicians and police officers and stuff like that and put them into the show. And the funny thing that I saw was that Jay Landsman was based on the guy who was playing underneath Bunny Colvin.
Yeah, with the mustache.
I'm like, yo, this guy don't even look like the type that eating sandwiches all disgusting and reading porno magazines. I was shocked.
Can we do a sidebar real quick and say how I think the actor who plays Jay Landsman has like the best gig on the whole show? Because every time he's on set, he's just halfway into like a whole sandwich, and it's everywhere. He's looking at porn all the time. He's just sitting there with food in his mouth. He's got the sweet gig.
Yeah,
that's the role to get. He's never out in like the dirty, crime scenes and getting all the blood and bodies and everything. No, he's eating sandwiches and looking at magazines.
Oh, the one time he was out on the crime scene was when Kima got shot. That was the only time I think he was on the crime scene. That was an important one too.
Oh yeah. When you're talking about Clay, what I like about the show too is that nobody on the show is a good guy. Nobody on the show is a bad guy. Even somebody like Clay, they always they always show you what makes them successful or what makes them get to the place where they are. And you're talking about how slick and the way he uses his words and the way Clay Davis can sort of mesmerize a crowd. And for Jay Landsman, that sequence when he basically gets McNulty's back, I think it's in season 2, maybe, where he basically goes to Rawls and pitches him on this idea of saving McNulty. And he's telling this elaborate story about how he was trying to masturbate but couldn't, and he was distracted because he started thinking about McNulty. And
that was season 1,
right?
I was going to bring that up.
Landsman goes through this elaborate con job on Rawls because he wants to get his guy back. And we know it's because he wants the number game. He wants the clearance rate. He wants to have McNulty back because he knows McNulty's good police. But it shows why Landsman is in the position that he is and how he got to that place, despite the fact that he seems like a complete F-up most of the time. But you can see how he has some of the same silver tongue qualities that Clay Davis clearly has in abundance.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about corruption too, it'd be remiss if we didn't discuss the stats like you just mentioned.
You definitely want to get to that, but I didn't know if anybody had more to say about corrupt politicians and Clay Davis.
So what's your thoughts, Ryan, on Clay Davis?
Possibly one of my favorite characters in the whole show. I think he's one of, like, by the time you finish season 5, you kind of see how certain characters, start in bad places and end up in good places. A couple of them, not a lot of them end well, but some of them do. Most of them start, relatively well and end up kind of not so great. But Clay Davis is he's one of the few that just kind of skates by and makes it out relatively okay compared to where he was at the beginning. And I think one of the unfortunate lessons of the show is that the morally murkier people are kind of the ones who are going to navigate the system that this city has. And I don't know, Clay Davis, for as shady and shisty as he is, he's one to watch because he figures it out. He knows what he's doing.
That's the point of that character, is that he's dirty and shisty and he gets away with a lot of crooked shit, but at the same time, his personality just captures you. I mean, when he says shit, when he says that, you can't help but like that. You want to see more of it. And the one thing about that article about the actor, he said that he knew not to overuse that word. He only used it in certain situations that necessitated it.
Right.
So that way you're not sick of it. You know, because sometimes people overuse a word, and by the time you're like, just using it like 5 times in the last 2 scenes. But he knows how to use it at an important moment, and it has that effect. And that's why that word is so powerful whenever he says it.
And for me, the scene that was the one that solidified my interest in Clay Davis is he does a speech on the courthouse steps and wins over the masses in this amazing moment when you think he is dead in the water. They keep talking about how they got the headshot. They've got proof that this guy is horribly corrupt. They can burn this guy a million different ways. And all he needed is an audience and a microphone, and he basically wins everybody back. It's amazing. The speech is so well done. And even Royce, his counterpartner, who was like, oh, this guy's toast, is like, God damn it. This guy's so freaking good. He just won over all the crowd, and anybody watching on the cameras at home on the news tonight, he just won everybody back.
Another good scene is when he's talking to the lawyer that he wants to represent him. That scene was good because of how, that lawyer felt like, I'm above that. I win many cases and stuff. Why would I want to defend you? And Clay Davis was just nailing it with how he's swaying him. Like we said, this man could sway anybody with the way he speaks. And he swayed that man to accept his case. And by the way, he's a real life Baltimore lawyer, And that was another thing. Like I said, they use real life people in these acting, and shit, I thought he came out very well in terms of acting. Like he was natural. That was the thing about David Simon, that he can get people off the street, be in the show, and they are natural. Snoop was like that. She came on the show, she felt natural to it because she was from Baltimore. So she just acting was like nothing to her. She just played herself.
Oh yeah. Whenever I love, so we're talking about the character Snoop, who's sort of one of the heavy hitters for the Marlowe crew, and whenever she'd pull up to a corner, be like, yeah, it's like she just give these little shouts. It wasn't even words; it was just like sounds, like bird calls, and people would be like, oh, hey, and then come running over. She'd be like, yeah.
Yep.
I love that Snoop called people. Somebody in the chat was asking what our other themes are, and so this is our first of 4 shows, 3 future ones. And we're going to talk about evolution, or some of the repetitive cycles, people that could be redeemed and can't because they're stuck in the system of cycles, or people that do have a chance at redemption and are able to evolve in some way, the challenges of change. We're going to talk about truth, how truth can be twisted and manipulated, and how lies and truth are a significant part of the series. And then we'll talk about addiction and characters who are stuck in a certain place because they can't break free of the things that they're obsessed with. So those are future shows that we will do on the show. And we may even finish with a little overall just recap of the show, favorite moments, favorite characters. If there's stuff that we want to do a 5th hour on, I'm more than happy to do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Sorry, somebody wanted to get to something that we stopped and put a pin in. What was it that somebody wanted to talk about?
Corruption in general, like the stat game.
The stat game, yes. Yep. Let's talk about stats. Go ahead, Ryan. Get us started.
Actually, I was thinking it'd be kind of cool to get you've been a teacher for a while now, and I think that was one of the coolest parts.
That's interesting. Because with the whole school thing and Prez bringing up juking the stats is the same as in police work. They do it in school and that whole test system. So what's your thoughts on that, John?
I think, the show does a lot with stats, and there's a whole economics of the math of the city and how it's working to this show that's really interesting, whether it's the economics of the street dealing, whether it's the economics of the crime statistics, or whether like you guys are saying, the economics of the classroom and, grades going up or scores going up. My favorite or least favorite sequence on that is when Prez Belusky, the cop turned teacher, at the end of his first year, he gets to look at the scores of his students. And he's very excited. He's like pointing out like, but look, they're proficient. They're proficient in reading. And she's like, proficient means they're only 2 years behind. And he's like, what? And then she's like, advanced means they're at grade level. And then she's pointing out how the terms are a twisted lie on the system, and how the whole thing is just bent, right? The whole thing is bent just to make somebody look good or somebody look bad. So I'm obviously very frustrated by that. I work at a private school, and there's things I love about my private school, and chief among them is that my private school doesn't believe in standardized testing for kids in elementary school.
Nice.
And so that's one of the reasons why I've stayed there, despite the fact that it's probably harder on my retirement in the future, is the idea that they don't want to play that stat game. These are children. We want to teach children how to think and how to feel and how to be good people. And that's way more important than, some random fact in social studies. So that really is something I agree with. And it's hard to watch the classroom sequences where you can see the pressure being placed on the teachers and the students to do something that is completely useless. I love and hate the bit when Presbalewski's trying to teach math word problems. And these are word problems that are in no way related to the lives these kids are leading. And the second he's able to put it in their language and say, somebody says something like, oh, no, you see the kids at home practicing, and one of the kids is like, okay, you sell this guy 3 dimes for this much and this girl for that, and what's the change? And the girl's like, $15. And she's like, well, damn, you could do it there, but you can't do it over here. And she's like, yeah, but you get beat if you don't do the count right on the street corner.
That's the Wallace situation in season 1 where he talked to that kid about it.
Right.
And he struggled on his schoolwork, but he knows how to do the math when it comes to drugs and selling that. Right. So that whole situation with the school was very depressing, when you look at it. A lot of those kids, they get caught in that system, and they like, I'd rather be on the streets, be in the hopper, than be in the system that's not even set up for me. That's why I loved the whole Bunny Coven thing, with him having that class, separate from the other kids, get the corner kids, put them in there and try and get them to know about what life is, life outside of just being a corner kid, because like he said, what are you teaching these kids? All they're going to do is just go back to the corner.
Right.
It's the same thing in the corner, with DeAndre's situation. The mother want him to go to school, but every time he goes to school, he stayed there for like a day or two and then go right back on the corners.
Yep. And then they have the stat game that the school is playing for like attendance days where they send out the guys. Oh, they only need to attend twice this semester and we get paid for them. So after they got him back the 2 times, you don't need to collect that kid again. Really? Yeah. So you're just going to let them run off. You're not even worried about like how they're all missing out on this huge important thing so that they can do this other thing. Yeah.
And then you had the Sherrod situation, with him and Bubbles and him trying to get him Sherrod back in school, and Sherrod just was like, man, this ain't for me. The first day he was in class, he hauled ass. Once the opportunity
once he saw Randy going out the room, he's like, I'm following Randy. That kid knows what's up. I'm out.
And then that whole scene where that girl got sliced, that was hard, man.
Oh my God.
That was rough.
And I love the way the school realizes that, Presbalewski's like, my students clearly are traumatized, but they're like acting like nothing happened because they're so numb to it in general as a concept, or because they know that to show that feeling, that emotion about it is only going to show weakness and they can't. That classroom environment is this little like competitive place where there's not the freedom to make mistakes or look foolish, which is where a classroom should succeed. Is making mistakes is where you learn. So you have to be able to look foolish in a classroom when you have to be able to make mistakes.
Another scene that was so good and so important was when Bunny Coven took the kids to the restaurant. I love that scene because it shows that how far apart from the streets they are and in the environment that they don't really know how to act in. They feel kind of embarrassed being there. This uppity class restaurant, nice food, the food they never even seen. They want McDonald's. Can we go to McDonald's?
Yeah,
it's such to see something like that. It's realistic because you take somebody that never really been out of the hood and take them into an environment that's foreign to them. They're definitely gonna act or react in a way that they like. This ain't for me. They don't want to act stupid because they like all eyes are on them. But at the same time, they can't be their normal selves because they are just completely taken out of their element.
Ryan, you wanted to talk about the corruption of police statistics because obviously the police statistics are a huge part of the show because the cop and criminal sides, the street and the homicide division are like always happening no matter what elements are added or subtracted over the seasons, and the stat game is legitimately like the whole run of the show.
I think if you really want to like look at the broad picture, I think David Simon is talking about how you could make a point that the whole stat game in general is based on kind of always looking at, like, I'm thinking about it from a retail perspective because I've worked in that situation before, and you're always looking at how well you did a year ago and trying to increase your numbers year over year. And I think he's taking that mentality, that kind of capitalistic, always be increasing, your margins and your profits. He's taking that mentality and applying it to all of these different areas of the city and watching how it's really not a good way to run things, because things like the police, like, you're judging how well you're policing your city based on, the number of murders. Like if you can keep the number of murders down, you're doing better or worse.
As if a homicide detective could somehow stop people from committing murder.
Right.
Which is ridiculous at its core. They're there after the fact. That's the whole purpose of their job.
It's just going to encourage them to kind of juke the stats, as they say, and, not report certain things or wait until, the end of the year. There's that whole plot line when they find all those dead bodies and they're like, wait a few days until the new year comes around and those will count as next year's bodies.
Yeah.
It's you see it, especially in season 4, when they do a lot of scenes side by side, even where you have teachers getting lessons from like, superintendents and higher ups about like how to teach kids. And then you cut to a scene of the same thing with a bunch of cops getting lectured by their lieutenants on, better ways to police the corners. And you realize that these are the same things. And both of these institutions are being failed by like the wrong approach from the top. So the whole thing is just kind of like a slow burn tragedy in a sense. Like you just know this is the wrong way to go about all of it. And that's kind of why the Bunny Colvin and the Amsterdam stuff resonates really well too, is because you see somebody who realizes, like we do, that this is not working, that this is not the way to solve any of these problems, and that to change something, you have to change something. You got to try something different, but that doesn't really work.
The thing I liked about the Amsterdam thing is that the mayor wanted to look at all options of it. So he didn't want to shut it down immediately. And when you think about it, like, you see all the stats, the neighborhoods and stuff, they're all good. They're clean because ain't nobody's being dropped. All the drug dealers are in Amsterdam. So he like, how can I maintain this while trying to deal with this? It's a dicey situation to put him. You had Odell and them wanting to say, man, kill that Amsterdam stuff. But at the same time, you kill the Amsterdam, all they're going to do is work their way right back to those corners. And it's going to be the same. You're going to be back to the same situation. So it's like, I understand why he played that game of trying to figure out an end around on how to maintain these numbers on the corners while trying to deal with this. And he had the health superintendent there, if I'm not mistaken. The health superintendent was trying to say this could work to our advantage, because they could look at the whole health situation and stuff like that.
Because they're having all the people they want to serve in one place, giving out condoms and needles and all the things that would make it a cleaner setup. But at the same time, you have the priest down there saying, "Yeah, you've put them all in one place, and that place is hell." Like you look at these people, like where are the bathrooms, right? Like where's the waste management? Like look at this place. you've turned this into hell on earth, and these people are suffering in it.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. But that's the point of The Wire, is to focus on the struggles that these people go through when it comes to dealing with how to manage this situation and how to deal with situations. There's difference, because when you're dealing with a situation, you got to put in the plan to say this is going to get dealt with. Whereas when you handle a situation, you got to look at it much further than just dealing with it. You got to look at different scenarios, look at different outcomes and stuff like that. What's going to hurt you, what's going to benefit you, and stuff like that. So that's what made the Amsterdam arc so good, because you're trying to look at the scenarios on how this is going to play out. And that's why I liked that whole mayor bit when he was looking at those scenarios.
Well, and to like connect it to corruption, one of the things about the school side that is kind of the rut everybody is stuck in there with the stat games. The villain for me in the school system season 4 is the woman with the skinny little lady with the glasses who comes in from the school district and is talking to them over and over again about like that group that Bunny Colvin is working with and how are they going to get tested. And she's calling them out on stuff and not listening to any of the things they have to say about how this group is developing. And in a real world scenario, that's the woman or person who buys the textbooks and pays for the standardized testing. And she's probably getting her kickbacks from all of these things. She's the corrupt element on that side. We don't really get a corrupt person on the education side, but legitimately that person at the top is getting some payments from those state testing companies and from those groups that are bidding on their textbooks. Oh, buy our textbooks. No, buy our textbooks. And there's that corrupt element in there. In fact, if people have noticed that the school years have shifted from when we were kids and we would be getting out right at the beginning of at the end of June, we would be out. Now the school year ends at the beginning of June. The school year gets out. Most kids are out at the beginning of June. Like Kate was like she's been off for almost 3 weeks now. My class last night was their last day. And that big shift happened for most of the country for state testing. People felt like there wasn't enough time to practice for state tests. So they moved the school year to give kids more time to practice for these tests. That's like the significant part about it. The city I grew up in, Laguna Beach, is still on the old system because they have all these summertime art festivals that need kids to work. And they can't shift without losing all that like child employment, basically. And so they haven't shifted yet for this like selfish reason. But the excuse to move is always, well, we need to give these kids more time studying for state tests. It's a stat reason. It's a statistics game. The juke the stats thing. And the hilarious part about it, in at least my school district, is that the percentage of kids that pass those tests is like super high. The high school kids, like in my district, almost all of them pass. So how many more kids are you successfully going to get to pass the test by shifting the entire school calendar for the entire school district? Like how many, what is that stat game for? Who are we benefiting there? But clearly there's somebody lining their pocket in that decision as well. I don't know who.
Yeah, it's all part of the game. That's right. Basically what everything's a game.
It's all in the game.
The chessboard. You got your kings, you got your queens, you got your bishops, you got your knights, and then you got a whole bunch of pawns.
Bunch of them little bitches on the chessboard.
Questions out at you guys. The chat seems to be Sam I Am is throwing out that Rawls is a corrupt guy, and he's the corrupt. For me, like I don't view him as the most corrupt cop on the stat game. Sean, who would you say is, in your opinion, the cop who is most corruptly addicted or connected to the stat game?
Stats. And when it comes to stats, you have each one of them wants the stats to be, sort of skewed, but at the same time, because Burrell, the one thing about Daniels that I liked in season 5 is that he wasn't going to juke the stats. And he said that Burrell did it before him, the one did it before that. So it just showed you that all the police commissioners prior was juking the stats. So it was a normal thing for them. It became normal. Like, hey, you're going to juke the stats. You're going to juke the stats, you know. Daniels didn't want to do that, you know, because he was like, the stats are going to be clean, and that's that. And so when it comes to the stats, I think they all has a hand in them, you know, in terms of, you know, making the stats skewed to benefit the mayor or whoever wants them to be in a way where they ain't looking bad. And that's what made Daniels is like, I'm going to take a hard stand and say, I ain't juking the stats. So they all had a hand in that.
all the commanders, right?
Oh,
what about you, Ryan? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's like the higher up you go, the more of a stat game it becomes. And I think that was one of the cooler parts about watching Daniels rise through the ranks is by the time you follow him to the, you know, contending to be like the commissioner of the police for the whole city. You think he's going to be the one to get through, and he's going to be the one noble, valiant person who doesn't care about, you know, the stats and making the mayor look good. But he has that line in the sand where, yeah, exactly.
That corrupt past came back.
Some dirt on him. He's got some dirt on him somewhere in the past.
And John, I know you brought up Herc being corrupt. You know, and I agree with you more. The things he was doing, and I never liked the Herc, to be honest. Like, I felt like Herc, out of all the characters, he never evolved. He stayed the same. You know, whereas at least Carver evolved away from Kirk and became like when Carver did the guy with the buzz haircut.
Colicchio,
yeah.
Thank you.
What he did to him, I agree with 100%, but most people would not do that because they don't want to, you know, turn on another cop.
Well, and I think right now we're seeing this discussion happen. I mean, this show is incredibly relevant. We're going to probably get political at certain points on one or another, but one of them for me is this idea of cops ratting on cops telling. Right now, there's all these articles coming out about people who have in the past tried to stop violence or stop corrupt cops and been fired for it or had horrible repercussions to their careers because they did the thing that we all want them to be doing, right? And seeing Carver make that decision, or later seeing Kima make that decision saying, I see something corrupt here or really, really wrong here and it needs to stop. The repercussions, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen to Kima's career, but it seems like Kima and Carver got away with something that most guys are going to get their ass handed to them for.
And Carver, he learned it through Daniels after the whole thing with the money in season 1, where they missed some of the money in the car and they had to go get it.
Right.
He learned from Daniels, and I really felt that Bunny Coven really touched Carver the most.
Absolutely.
You know, to the point where Carver said, and then the whole thing with Randy, it really made Carver stand out and grow as a character.
Well, even that whole season where he spent the whole season, he knew all those kids' names by the end. He knew all their kids where they go out. The fact that he stopped that foot pursuit, the foot pursuit at the beginning of the season that he does, where he's like, I'm going to beat you harder than you beat your dick. And he's just like, even. Then later on, he has another foot pursuit. And he's like, why am I chasing this guy? I know where they hang out. I'll get them 5 hours from now. Let's go. Right?
Yep.
He's learned that the best use of his skills and their resources is not chasing a little hopper through the alleys. That's stupid. Don't do it. Get to know your district and know these kids, and you'll know where they hang out. And you can always find them there.
And that was the thing we learned in the corner where, you know, they kept busting DeAndre because, you know, they know his hair just like they knew Naaman's hair.
Right.
At the same time, we see in both shows that these cops develop a relationship with these hoppers, with these dealers. And that's something that Ed Burns knows well, because when you're dealing with these kids, you're putting cuffs on them a lot of times, but you're seeing them all the time. And you can't help but think of a relationship forming. That's what made the whole McNulty and Bodie thing so poignant in season 4. You know, before Bodie got killed, he was, you know, with McNulty. And McNulty respected that he was a soldier and that, you know, he cared for his people, you know, Barksdale people and all that. So it was that relationship that we saw form within those 4 seasons between a police and drug dealer, that you really get to see that they're no different than it's the system that's just trying to break them down.
Absolutely. There's two cops I want to talk about on this. On this idea of corruption on the cop side, because we talked about lawyers on the legal side, we talked about politicians on the politics side, and we talked a little bit about the unions and on the doc side, and now we're getting into the cop side, and I want to finish with the street side because I think it'd be an interesting discussion. Can corruption exist within a criminal organization? What does corruption in a criminal organization look like? But the two cops I wanted to mention, you mentioned Herc, and he was my runner-up for this discussion because we see Herc consistently doing illegal things, like constantly, whether it's stealing from a lawyer to get illegal evidence to then support a wiretap that will be illegally funded and then can't be used in court at the end of the show. Or at the beginning of the show, there are several moments when either he thinks about taking money or actually does take money from a crime scene bust, right? He and Carver, you see them stuffing money under their vests at one point. Like, we're stealing this money. It's ours. We earned it, right? And then, of course, lying to their superiors when they're losing equipment, whether it's Fuzzy Dunlop's ball or whether it's Fuzzy Dunlop's camera, whatever it is. He is consistently on that edge. And there are times when he gets caught and it's a mistake. And there's times when he doesn't get caught and he gets away with it. I feel like Herc is a crooked cop because he has no compunctions about breaking the rules for his own means. And that's what I always was. I mean, I'm not saying that he's not all bad. I'm not saying he's all bad because there's definitely moments when he's
I give him props for taking the full heat on the camera thing. And Absolutely. They came after because they was going to get Sidnor,
right?
And what's his name? I forgot the other Dozeman. They was going to take them too.
Yeah,
but he said, "No, I'll take the full weight on this."
Yeah, and then the other guy for me was Burrell, and the reason I would put Burrell above Rawls and above Valchek, who, by the way, Valchek is pretty corrupt because he's using his position in the police to just screw over Sobotka because he doesn't like him. Like he's abusing his place of power to do. So Valchek has his own spot. But for me, Burrell is worst. And the reason why is obviously because, number one, he's top dog. So it all, shit rolls downhill. He's at the top. He's the guy making all that crap happen. But two, even when given the opportunity and the directive from the mayor, stats are done. I hate the stat game. Stop playing the stat game. He goes right back in and playing the stat game, intentionally keeping the stat game going. For me, that's like, I know it's like all he knows, and he's doing it for his own benefit, but it's like, that feels like the biggest crime committed by those top cops guys.
You know where he messed up was when they were telling him to put a hold on that whole killing. I forgot what it was, but it's the killing. And he said, "We need you to put a hold on that, because we got an election coming up. We don't need this." So what he does is take the initial homicide officer off it and put Kima on it, a rookie detective. First time on the job in her first major case. And they looked at they put that in the paper and like, what? And that was like the beginning of the end for Burrell right there. Like he knew he was going to be gone because he was already on thin ice by making that decision. Right. You don't take a experienced veteran homicide detective off a case just to slow it down by putting a rookie on there. You just tell the detective, slow the case down until we get this whole election thing to deal with. But to put a rookie on there, that was a big no-no.
Absolutely.
Doesn't look good.
Ryan, was there anything you wanted to add to the police corruption side that I didn't get to or that you wanted to contribute? I feel like you've been mulling.
I'm thinking already ahead to you mentioned the corruption and the criminal side of it. I'm already working on that.
Because this was something that I was thinking about. We have all these worlds, right? The docs or the journalists or whatever. And I think because corruption is such a big part of the show, there are elements of it scattered through all of these systems, right? The idea that the reason that these systems that Sean keeps talking about aren't working and that they constantly crush people with good intentions is because there's a little bit of corruption taking all the money and the resources and controlling everything. Is it possible that there's an element of corruption in the pit or in the Barksdale organization or the Stanfield organization or the Prop Joe organization? What does corruption in a criminal organization look like?
I was actually thinking of corruption. You brought up Valchek a while ago, and I think a quick little example of corruption in that sense is nepotism. Like how he kind of just rams Przybylewski into the police department altogether, let alone ramming him into various places he does not belong. He's not a good cop, and he demonstrates that several times throughout the show. And I think you could make that same argument for nepotism being corruption in like D'Angelo's case, for example. He doesn't really have what it takes, I guess. He kind of does, and he kind of doesn't, as evidenced by the fact that he ends up in jail. But I think D'Angelo is a good example of, or Avon and D'Angelo kind of putting him into that position is an example of corruption. And I would also argue on the same token, you have Prop Joe and Cheese, who is his nephew, and Cheese is kind of like a fly off the handle, kind of act before thinking sort of gangster, and he doesn't really play the game the right way. He does and he doesn't, and it ends up kind of backfiring on him at the very end. But
that was a glorious scene right there. Glorious scene.
I think those would be two good examples of corruption, I guess, like not really working out for various criminals in this show.
Well, that's because Slim Charles is awesome, Sean. That voice. Oh, I can listen to Slim Charles talk all day.
Glorious.
Oh my God. So what do you think, Sean? Is it possible to have corruption within this portion of the show, this criminal organization, and what does that look like?
Sam I.M. says Stringer is the most corrupt in the Barksdale organization. Now, here's the thing with Stringer. He was tight with Barksdale. They was best friends. What had happened was Stringer started doing things behind Avon's back, and that's almost like a backstabbing in the way of you're going to make a deal with Prop Joe with Avon not knowing it. You're going to kill off D'Angelo because you felt that he was going to turn, but in the case, you're going to do it with knowing that the uncle is in the same prison with him, and you doing all this shady stuff. You're going to kill D'Angelo off and then take his girl, hook up with his woman. And I was like, man,
that
this guy,
shot of him doing that shot of him
whole
doing
season,
zipper.
Yeah, the zipper.
It's the like poisoned apple in the whole process, right? That's like the vilest debasement, right?
And after season 2, I knew that Stringer was gonna go because you do these things, you're pretty much setting yourself up for your demise. And then not only that, what he did to Brother Mozone was the ultimate end. Where he gonna go confront, he gonna set Omar up to go shoot Brother Mozone because Brother Mozone was protecting the projects thanks to Avon. Then he gonna confront Brother Mozone and says, when Brother Mozone said they will be getting it, and Stringer was taken back by that. He's like, hey, like, who went at you? And then Brother Mozone knew right then and there that you went at me. He knew it.
Yep.
That's why he specifically said they in that sentence to get a reaction out of Stringer. And once Stringer was taken aback by it, that's where he knew that, yeah, it was you.
Yep. So the word corrupt has to do with dishonesty. I was looking it up the other day, and I brought it up right here. It says having or showing willingness to act dishonestly in return for personal gain or money. And so I feel like it can exist in any criminal organization because if you're being, like Sean and Ryan are saying here, if you're being dishonest to somebody for your own personal gain, within that element, you are now corrupt. And I think Stringer is a great example of that. Somebody who is willing to do whatever it takes for himself and betray people that he's had this lifelong friendship for. I think Prop Joe is another example of somebody that blows where the wind takes him, and he's willing to tell a lie to this person or tell a lie to that person if it keeps him going. for himself.
Prop Joe set himself up too with all the devious things he was doing.
Absolutely.
He put Omar on that card game that started the whole thing with Marlo. He gave what was it? The number, Avon Barksdale's pager number to Omar,
right,
to take out Avon,
right,
because he knows that he wants that real estate. Avon got that good real estate, so he knows Avon out the picture, he can get that good real estate. So Prop Joe was doing devious things that set himself up.
And so that for me, that was the corrupt character I thought of first. Of course, Stringer came to mind, but for me, Prop Joe feels like the ultimate background devious sort of corrupt player in the criminal side. I mean, at least Marlo, he's not going to lie to you. He's just gonna say nothing and then come back later and pop a cap in you, and that's it. Like he plays the game far more like just straight, he's Marlo. He's gonna kill you.
Here's where Marlo's a bit corrupt, and I ain't saying that he's corrupt in terms of. He's corrupt in the sense that he thinks his name has so much value that if anybody says anything wrong about him, they gone. He wants them gone. What he did to that security guard was just completely unnecessary. All the dude did was confronting him about it. He did that on purpose, take the lollipop just to get the guard to confront him. And as soon as the guard confronted him, he knew he was going to be gone. Junebug, Marlo's this, Marlo's that. Oh, Junebug got to go. I'm like, he is so messed up with thinking that his name is so valuable that by the time we get to the end and he goes back to the streets and say, you know who I am? They're like, nah, I don't know who the fuck you are. Before he confronted them, they told about Omar. That shows you how Omar's name still rings even after death, that his name is still legendary in the streets. But nobody know Marlo.
I might argue on that one, but what you're saying about Marlo, though, that scene when he's in jail with his guys and they finally let him in on what Omar's been saying about him, and it's like one of the few times you see Marlo lose his crap. And he's like, he's talking about me? My name is my name. Right? He's just like, he loses it in that little holding cell.
Yeah, because I just feel that he's corrupt in his own mind.
Right?
His mind is corrupted to think that anybody talk negative about him, they're going to get got.
But
and,
for me,
Avon was respected. That the referee that confronted him in the basketball game, where he confronted the ref was terrified.
Oh, man.
If that was Marlo would have had that ref dead.
That ref retired that day. You know it. He's like, I'm never doing this again. But for me, Marlo at least feels like there's less dishonesty to what Marlo's doing.
I agree with that.
Prop Joe and Stringer feel very dishonest, and they have to be. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, that criminals shouldn't be dishonest, right? But it's the idea that that to get where you are, you certainly have to play that game.
Yeah.
But the corruption within the criminal side, I feel like it does kind of exist. Ryan, you look like you're ready to say something.
Oh no, I'm just rolling along, man. You got to keep your mouth shut. That's what I'm learning here. You don't say anything. Talk about Marlo.
Marlo.
That's why I just say that he's corrupt within his own mind. He thinks he's something when he really ain't nothing. He'll be honest with his crew, but at the same time, it's like, come on, bro. That's some petty shit you're doing.
Now, you said something about names ringing out and Omar's name ringing out. Do you think, if you imagine season 6 of the show, because obviously the idea of the show is that it lives beyond your television screen because it's real. Does Omar's name still ring out? Because I feel like the show makes a very different statement about Omar. And we can get to Omar on another level because obviously we have several other theme shows to talk about, and Omar doesn't necessarily fit in the corruption side. Because Omar might be the most honest person in the world of The Wire. Yeah. Omar makes no pretenses about anything. He is what he is. It's all in the game.
I think that's why his name rings out, is because he was a criminal and he robbed drug dealers, but at the same time, he was loyal to his people, and that he never put his gun on anybody that wasn't in the game. And that when you hear after his death, they were saying, yo, Omar got killed in the shootout. He went guns blazing and stuff, and they got him and stuff. There was various stories about his death.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that when you have this mythology of Omar, Omar's coming and stuff like that, people know your name, and then they gonna revisit it. Like, yo, you remember when Omar stuck up this kid on the block, and took his shit? It's even after a year, Omar's, because he's a legend in the streets, and when you know somebody as a legend in the streets, like when rappers mention, the Supreme Team in Fort Greene, or the Supreme Team in Queens, or Alpo and them in Harlem, their names still ring out. Rappers almost idolize them. So I can imagine a rapper a year, 2 years later in Baltimore bringing up Omar's name.
I totally agree with some of that, but I feel like the show makes a slightly different comment with Omar, and the fact that, like, the first few people on the scene don't know who he is, don't care. It's just another crime. It takes Bunk to get there to realize what's going on. And even then, the word travels really slow. The newspaper get the article. The newspaper's like, we're not going to run this article. We don't care. It doesn't matter who he is. We're going to forget him. And then the moment that is like it stings the most is when Omar's body gets to the morgue, and they've got the wrong name tag on it. They don't even have his body marked with his name anymore. The morgue guy's going around. He pulls this thing and it says black guy, and he unzips it, and it's a white guy. And he's like, oh. And then he unzips this one. He's like, oh. And then he swaps the cards to the correct body. I feel like the comment being made there is that when you're dead, you're not going to live a whole lot longer. The city's going to move on. There'll be a new Omar that people will be talking about next.
That's what I was going to say, too. I think based on how successful Michael is in his new role at the end of the show.
There's an evolution topic we definitely will want to bring up, right?
Exactly. It just now you go.
No, go ahead, Ryan. Yeah.
I don't even know what I was gonna say. I just think it's a good segue into the eventual evolution discussion we're doing. I just think that Omar's name, may or may not kind of continue into season 6, depending on how far of a time jump that they might have done.
Depends on time. If it falls like a year afterwards, then it'll still ring out. But if it's a time jump, then it ain't gonna ring out. But at the same time, Michael doesn't have the name that Omar has, whereas Omar's coming. That's just a legendary saying, Yeah. When you say Michael's coming, well, like Michael Myers, is Michael Myers coming?
Always.
Well, I think we should probably wind this down. So those of you that have hung out or watching on the replay, like I said at the beginning, this is the first of 4 themed discussions. We're going to be going, I think we agreed on addiction next. So the next time we do one of these, I don't even know if we know, are we doing it next Friday? Do you guys want to do this again next Friday, or do we need time in between? Maybe
I might need a little more time. We'll figure it out.
So the plan is to do
you think you could do it every 2 weeks?
I could do it every single week, but I want to make sure everybody feels comfortable. So we can figure it out off air. We can plan it out.
Yeah.
But look out for more of these. I'll definitely be posting them on Instagram, just like these guys. We really appreciate you coming by. If there are characters that we didn't talk about that you feel like represent corruption really well, if there are other themes beyond the ones that
this one character.
Oh yeah,
freaking Walker, Officer Walker, corrupt.
Which one is he? I'm not even remembering him.
The one who broke Donut's fingers.
Oh Jesus, that guy! Holy crap!
For the small amount of scenes he had, that dude was as corrupt.
The one they throw the paint, the kids throw the yellow paint on.
So he took the ring from Omar. He took money from Omar. I remember season, I think it was season 2, where he wanted to bum rush in the door, and Daniel was like, "No, we ain't doing that." He's the type that you despise because you
take shit from Bubs.
Yeah, he steals from Bubs. I'm like, when you steal from a drug addict, then you're the lowest of the low, and you ain't no saving.
Oh my God, absolutely. That's a great. I didn't even remember his name. I hated him so much. I probably was like, I don't want to remember that guy's name. Wow.
Yeah, he's definition of a corrupt policeman that just do whatever he wants and think that he's validated because of the badge. That's why we in the situation we in with this whole thing going on today. Because you got the badge, you got a gun, you think you can do whatever you want.
And that guy legitimately feels that way. Like it's very much like our characters that we love in season 1 when Presbo and Herc and Carver show up in the towers late at night and they just start grabbing random people and beating on them, and Presbo's hitting that guy with his gun, and it's like they feel like that it's completely justified what they're doing.
Yeah.
Not that we want to paint all cops with this brush, but there's clearly a system here with that crack of corruption that is allowing it to go on in perpetuity, which is scary, legitimately scary and horrifying. So again, so we want to do addiction next. We're also going to cover evolution, or sometimes the lack thereof, the cycles that are going on within these systems. And we want to talk about truth, the way truth is and abused, and the places where it doesn't seem to appear when we need it. So those are the next 3 topics that we want to do for sure. Again, if you have ideas for topics to discuss, for sure, let us know. I also think it'd be fun to do favorite quotes, favorite scenes, favorite moments or arcs. So if you have some favorites you can definitely let us know in the comments down below.
Bro, you recent with that quotes, because there's too many.
There's so many.
There's so many quotes.
Endless.
That's hard to even pick a top 5 on quotes alone. I mean, I'll tell you one though. The Burrell, when it said the gods are fucking you, you find a way to fuck. Oh my god,
oh, man. Well, and he's Rawls with this one goes in here. This one.
Oh man,
and that bit I could watch Rawls do that speech to McNulty in season 1 just over and over and over again. So good. So these guys, I put links down below for their channel, so you can find Stay Puff and you can find Comic Tom 101. Not that most of you don't have that channel subscribed to already, but you can check it out if you wanted to. We will be back hopefully soon with another one of these. I supremely thank you for coming by, and hopefully we made you either want to rewatch the series or check it out for the first time, because it's one of the more complicated and fascinating television shows you'll ever find. Yes. Thanks a lot, guys, for doing this. This is a whole lot of fun, and I'm glad we finally got to do one of these.
Right. It took forever, but we did it.
Yeah, it was fun. Once we got to talking, it was just roll off the tongue like Clay Davis.
All right, everybody. Can we see the statue one last time, Sean?
Play us out.